Welcome to Life by Design, episode 304. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Cratio Jug.
Happy holidays.
Cratio, great to hear from you. I know we chatted earlier today already, but great to hear from you. I'm excited to not just do the podcast, but excited for 2019.
Yeah, it's funny. It's always interesting. Like there's like two camps to this New Year thing. People who are super excited because it's a fresh new start, and people who are around it's just another day. It's just another month. And I mean, both are right, but I don't know if something's going to motivate you to make a change. I don't think that's ever bad.
No, it was funny because I was listening to some stuff about football, and as usual, and they were talking about how Belichick would often come up with the craziest stuff to motivate his team, like pull stuff out of the newspaper from article from somebody who, wrote, some kind of piece that probably was partially true and not true. And he would post that on the board and use that to motivate his team. And, as the commentator was saying, whatever it takes. He's like, if that's what it takes to motivate your team, to give them something to rally around, then so what? That's what it takes. And this is the same type of thing. It's all about context. So if you choose to look at it as just another day and, oh, well, who cares? But if your ultimate goal is to figure out a way to grow and be happy and expand in your life, then, maybe you can actually frame it up as, here we are, fresh start, set goals, milestones. I just don't understand why you wouldn't do that.
I agree. My favorite Bill Belichick story of all time is when he resigned from being the coach of the New York Jets on a napkin.
I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know? Like, he was literally, I think he was the New York Jets coach for, I think it was like 2 days or 2 weeks or some ridiculous short period of time. And they had this big press conference, and then he was like, I'm resigning. And they're like, well, where did you stay? He's like, right here on this napkin. He wrote, like, I resigned, Bill Belichick.
That's funny. Well, it leads me to think about a lot of what's going to happen for our listeners and people who are new to the podcast over the holidays. We're going to obviously very likely indulge in many ways. And there's ways that you can mitigate that, which we've talked about on other podcasts, but you're probably going to indulge, and then the new year's going to come and you're going to start to set goals. And one of those goals is probably going to be to lose some weight or to become more fit or to, tone your arms. So, obviously we're chit-chatting about how funny it is, different products and marketers, they do a great job of preying on our desire to want to tone our arms or tone the butt, especially at times, after we've had some type of indulgence. And, the message today, and this is what we're talking about and why it's important, is to really, if you actually want those things to happen, to not be misled by the articles and the Facebook articles and videos and ads and rely on either half-truths or incorrect information. We actually want to help you understand what it's going to take to actually, quote unquote, tone your arms and actually get the results that you want. So you don't spin your wheels for 6 months and then wonder why that arm toning exercise or those 12, glute tips don't actually work the way that you were hoping they would.
Yeah, so the reason I think it's important to paint some context, the reason you keep saying tone your arms is because the article that I had in mind was one that I found online around, the 12 exercises that you needed to do to tone your arms. And I mean, good for them. The exercises are actually good, bodybuilding exercises. The issue is that if you're not starting from like only needing to lose, 5 to 10 pounds, and you're starting from the beginning, like a lot of people are, especially after the holidays, it's misleading in the sense that you're not going to get the result that you want by doing these 12 exercises. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen before you get that result.
So where do people start, Cratio? What are the principles that are at play here? Someone wants to tone their arms. Again, I'm using the air quotes. What is the important first step to this process where maybe 5 years from now they can have toned arms, but they have to start in the place where they actually are?
Sure. So step number 1 is to not do anything and to take a step back and to really get clear on what it is exactly that you're trying to achieve and trying to do. For example, I love that word. I love that toned arms keeps coming up.
Right.
If you really want to tone your arms, what's at play? Do you really want to get leaner? Could it be deeper? Could it be you want to feel higher, better self-esteem? Because again, really understanding and getting clarity around your goals, I think, is step number one. But let's say the goal is to lose some weight and to tone your body. Step number two would be to start measuring and start counting your nutrition. Nutrition in terms of weight loss is far more important than any type of training effect. It's actually surprising, Jamie, and I know you're going to agree with me on this one. It's surprising if your nutrition is on point, how little exercise you actually need to do to get a training effect that will have you loving the results of the body that you get. And then step number three, of course, is to actually do the training.
Well, I think I want to talk about the second point because you're right. I do agree. And, when it comes to fat loss and just even the idea of toning, really toning just means seeing the muscles that exist in
That's
your
right.
body. And so,
That's right.
I mean, of course, you could talk a bit about the actual tone or the contraction of the muscle. And so, again, you take, for example, if you've ever seen the tone of a bodybuilder, yes, when they're really low body fat, but you ever notice how the tone of a power lifter, an Olympic lifter, it's almost like their muscle tissue is under more contracted activity versus, say, a bodybuilder who can tend to have more of a puffier and less dense look. Now, it's not always the case, but the point is there's probably a combination of body fat reduction and then the type of lifting that you're doing in order to give you the look that you would like to have. That said, you're right. It's interesting. Your training is not necessarily the best avenue to develop or lead to fat loss. And I know that sounds in opposition to what most people are used to, especially in the CrossFit world as an example, because training volume is so high in many types of CrossFit facilities and, making the case that you're going to lose body fat. Really, the purpose of training is to tell your body to preserve lean muscle. That's really the purpose of training within a dietary context, within a fat loss context, is to tell your body to keep the lean muscle we have while we use body fat as an energy or a fuel source. So in order to do that, you really only need to train, 2 to 4 times a week max and focusing on strength training type movements while you hone in the diet and nutrition. Because the issue is if you're training more than that, or the volume gets up too high and you're already on a lower calorie, lower nutrient diet, then that can become a problem for your body. You're going to become fatigued, tired, your lifts are not going to be as good, your recovery is not going to be as good, and you could actually blunt the fat loss process. If you just train just enough to tell your body, hey, keep the muscle mass that we have, and then lose body fat as you get leaner and you see more muscle, should you want to increase the size of those muscles, that's a totally different process, right? Muscle hypertrophy requires increasing your consumption of food, increasing your calories generally to or beyond what your body needs, and training at a much higher volume. So most people don't think of this. They just train as much as possible and eat as little as possible. And I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just to add to that point, when we're talking specifically about training volume, one of the reasons that pure CrossFitters train a lot for volume is because CrossFitters are concerned with body function. And if you're doing complex movements that are gymnastic-based movements, like a muscle up or a pull up or a power clean, anything that's complex like that, you need to develop nerve system habits. And if you're training a gymnast, you'll notice that gymnasts train a lot because it takes a lot of repetitions and a lot of time to get that type of volume. The misconception, sorry, not just volume, but nerve system effect. The misconception, again, is that we have to grind your body down to get a lean, nice physique, which is you've done a great job of already talking about.
Right. No, it's entirely true. And, back to a CrossFitter or an Olympic athlete or a gymnast, the volume is there, like you said, to increase the neural effect and the repetition. But, a lot of those cases at the higher levels, they're already at lean body fat levels. If your goal is to reduce body, and when you think about the performance, let's say somebody gets in and they want to look at CrossFit and become better at the performance side of training, you're probably better off in most cases, unless you're talking about being in the heavyweight class for weightlifting or Olympic lifting and so on, you're probably better off getting lean first, right? As one of the first things that you do is you get as lean as you possibly can within a certain range. And once that leanness is there, one, your performance generally is going to go up in terms of how you move and how you feel. And then you can start changing your diet to increase the caloric intake to make sure that your body can slowly build, or I guess as fast as possible, but it will be slow in terms of the building of lean muscle mass. It's much easier to go the other way. And I think a lot of times people, they don't want to do that first. They think, oh, I got to lift a bunch of weight and I want to get built. Well, you're actually going to have a much easier path if you reduce your body fat percentage first, and then you can increase with a better body fat percentage. It does a lot on the side of how your body manages its nutrition, not just what we eat, but how your body deals with that. When you have lower body fat percentage, generally your body's better at managing blood sugar. You can actually consume more carbohydrates because your blood sugar regulation is better, and your body will be able to get more of the volume of nutrition in order to build muscle tissue versus going the other way around.
Yeah, totally agree. And in terms of types of exercise, again, like we looking back at the arm toning article, if this is a process that you're interested in doing properly, you don't need to tone your arms. You need to focus on actual strength developing movements to maintain your muscle mass while you're getting toned,
Exactly.
which is squatting, deadlifting, an overhead, a horizontal, and pulling, right? Yeah. The major body movements.
Right. I mean, like I said, if you want toned arms and you're beyond, 20% body fat for a guy and, 25 or 30% for a female, then your first step is just implement a strength training program without excessive volume and reduce your caloric intake by a lot, increase your protein intake to preserve muscle mass. And you're going to need to do that for a while, really.
Yep.
1 pound of body fat loss per week is, fairly aggressive. It's doable for sure. So, I mean, if you had to lose or wanted to lose 20 to 30 pounds, you're talking about 20 to 30 weeks of being consistent in this process. So, you have to look at the long game here when it comes to this type of training effect. Let's say you want to look a certain way in your mind and that's what you think is healthy. Understand it could be a 1-year process to get to the level of leanness, and then another 2 or 3 year process to build your body up into the way that you would like it to look. And unless you have that type of mentality and mindset versus jumping into January thinking, I'm at 35% body fat and I want to tone my arms, you're actually going to waste a lot of energy, right? Because you're going to show up in the gym and you're going to be over on the rack doing curls and all these other things when really you're totally wasting your time. And 1 year is going to go by and you're going to think, wow, I didn't really increase my arm toning. I just did a bunch of curls. And so spend your time doing the primary lifts, squats, deadlifts, pulls, pushes, rows, and so on, and hone in the diet. Get what's right in terms of the kitchen, get that set, and the gym will be a simple process for now. And then once that change has happened, then you can start to transition into a different goal. And I think the point here, Show, is it all depends on the context, right? What's your goal?
100%.
Right? Which is always the case. What's your goal? Is it to lose body fat? Is it to build muscle? Oh, I would like to do both. Okay.
Well, that's why when I started, the first comment is to take a step back and see what you're really after, right? Like if you think that going to the gym, and developing a body at any cost is going to somehow heighten your self-esteem, in my experience and with all the people that I know that do figures and that do competitions and stuff like that, really what happens is you're the same person just with a better body. You don't actually feel any better about yourself. Mm-hmm. So again, it's just about knowing and creating your own context within which to work for and with.
Guys, have a great holiday season and a happy new year. And as always, thank you for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.